France at Villeminot now. Papers are reacting to the stability programme laid out by the finance minister, Michel Sapin.
That's right. Now, Michel Sapin outlined this strategy to bring the French public finances into line with the Eurozone rules, basically to bring deficit under 3%, the 3% threshold by 2015. But this is the front page of Le Figaro, the right-leaning daily, which, surprise, surprise, is skeptical. Now, why is Le Figaro skeptical about Michel Sapin's plan? It's because this plan is based on very optimistic forecasts about where the French economy is going. Basically, the whole plan rests on the very optimistic scenario that there will be a 2.25 growth during the last 2 years of François Hollande's presidency. So Le Figaro says this is wishful thinking and they just don't buy it. And this is their editorial that you can see here that says there are two ways to balance a budget. Either you can do it the realistic way, which is to adjust your spending to the amount of money you're actually making. And then there's the magical world way of balancing your budget, which is to adjust your spending on the money you might just make tomorrow. This is imaginary math, says Le Figaro. It's kind of like an enchanted fairy kingdom, which that's their words actually in Le Figaro today, where everything works out. Now, Le Figaro says there's nothing wrong about believing in miracles, but the government really shouldn't rely on miracles to get the French economy back on track.
They wouldn't be the first French government to do so, though. France has a history of relying on over-optimistic growth forecasts to balance its budget. So although it's probably not a great strategy, they're not the first ones to do it.
All right, Flo, we're moving on to something completely different. Left-leaning Libération is focusing on a controversial rent law. Tell us more.
That's right. This is a controversial, but also could be optimistic for some people. Libération wonders, are we going towards the end of rent abuse? Now, you might remember Cécile Duflot. She's a very outspoken member of the Green Party. She was the former housing minister before the cabinet reshuffle. And before she left the government, she was instrumental in pushing through something known as the Loi Duflot. Basically, it's a series of groundbreaking laws to control rents and cap real estate agent fees. And basically, the aim of this law is to keep rents from spiraling out of control and to make sure that big cities like Paris don't become a haven for rich people. Now, Libération is focusing on this today because it was unclear whether or not the government was actually going to pursue this law after she left the government. But it's going to, and starting in autumn, the law will be applied in the greater Paris region until being extended to the rest of the country. Now, Libération in its editorial says, this is a very honorable thing to do to tackle high rents because the situation in a lot of big cities is ridiculous. A lot of people are spending more than half their earnings on their rent, and this is very harmful for the working and middle class. But Libé wonders, is the Duflot law really the solution? And it says there could actually be some adverse side effects. For instance, lower rents could actually increase to reach the median reference wage. So it might not be the solution.
All right, well, another story that we're looking at today, and the French papers are clearly focusing on, is how things have changed in Bangladesh a year on from the factory disaster there.
That's right. We were just hearing about that in the business review. Libération takes a closer look. It was a real eye-opener for the poor working conditions in factories in Bangladesh. Though it sparked international outrage and calls for change, Libé says actually progress in working conditions, whether it's salaries or safety, it's only moving forward very slowly.
All right, and finally, a lot of focus on unrest in Brazil with very little time ahead of the World Cup.
That's right, just 7 weeks to go before the World Cup kicks off, and there have been riots in Rio. Now, this started off in a favela after a young man was killed, and it spread to other neighborhoods like the Copacabana neighborhood. And you can see here, 20 Minutes likens the whole situation to a power keg. With just one spark and the whole thing could explode. 20 Minutes says social tensions are really reaching a climax in Brazil right now, and this is a very violent atmosphere in the whole country that is a real serious cause of concern.
All right, Flo, thanks very much for that update of the top stories in the papers. We're speaking to you a little bit later on. Coming up after the break, again, 1 year after the Rana Plaza garment factory collapse, killing more than 1,100 workers, survivors are still struggling to rebuild their lives. France 24 reporters have been to investigate. Do stay tuned.